You're listening to the Health Courage Collective podcast, episode 37, Too Much Protein. Welcome to the Health Courage Collective podcast, the show for women who are too busy to slog through hours of generalized, inapplicable, and often contradictory health information, but too smart to ignore that a few minutes of focused attention now can prevent years of suffering in the future. I'm your host, Christina Hackett, a pharmacist who doesn't want you to live on prescriptions, a certified coach specifically trained to maximize your potential, and a compulsive learner obsessed with preventative, cutting-edge, holistic, and integrative medicine. I'm on a mission to increase your physical and mental resilience so you can fearlessly look forward to your next 40-plus limitless years. Your time is now. Let's go. Hi, and welcome back to this week's podcast. I'm so glad you're here. Are you ready for another episode? I just got home from the gym. I've got my gold standard protein shake next to me, which is kind of ironic considering this episode. I hope you're having a great day. Have you been thinking about how loving what is the foundation upon which to build a sturdy structure of what is possible for the future? Today, we're going to attempt to venture into the realm of protein. It can be a major rabbit hole that we may never be able to claw our way out of, but I'll try to keep us on track. What do you know about protein? We hear all kinds of things. Eat more protein. Eat high protein snacks. Don't eat snacks. Protein builds muscle. Drink a protein shake within 30 minutes of your workout. The time of day you eat protein doesn't matter at all. Eat whey protein after a workout and casein protein before bed. Protein helps you lose weight. Protein causes weight gain. Protein keeps you full. Most Americans don't eat enough protein. Eat 1 gram of protein for every pound of body weight you are. Eat a half a gram of protein for every pound of body weight you are. Eat lean protein like turkey only. Protein should be eaten the way God intended, packaged together with fat, like a steak, an egg, or a nut. I've heard all of that before, and I'm sure you have too. I'm not a dietitian or a nutritionist, but I read and listen to a lot of advice from a lot of people who are way smarter than I am. Many of them have very different and very strong opinions. I think they all make good points, and that once you get beyond the basics, like fresh, healthy, real food is good, and anything processed, packaged, made with sugar, industrial oils, or man-made chemicals is not, it starts to get pretty personal, and what is healthy and energizing for one person isn't for someone else. We are biochemically different, and that's a good thing. I really believe that some people will thrive on more or less protein than others. There's never a one-size-fits-all for nutrients, but let's start at the beginning. What is protein? When you think of our 3 major macronutrients, protein, fat, and carbohydrates, only 2 of them are essential. There are essential fatty acids that make up fats and essential amino acids that make up proteins. There's no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. So we definitely do need protein to live. I've heard from someone I really like named Dr. Benjamin Bickman, who's a professor at BYU, and a few other experts that they don't think protein should be considered one of our macronutrients. They say it's an essential building block of life, more like a vitamin, and that saying it has 4 calories per gram and treating it like fats and carbs doesn't really work. I don't know about that, but I do know that we live in a society that calls it a macronutrient, so right or wrong, we'll go with that for now. A protein is a molecule that's essential to all life. It's made of smaller sections called amino acids that are all strung together. Which amino acids are strung together in which order determines what kind of protein it is. There are 22 amino acids that can be put together in different ways to make all kinds of different proteins with different jobs. We have approximately 20,000 different kinds of proteins in our body, all made from different combinations of those 22 amino acids. Strings of amino acids fold together to make all kinds of different origami shapes, and the 3D shape has to do with what the protein's job is. We make some amino acids, and we also get them from the food we eat. When we eat protein, our digestive system breaks it down into its amino acid subunits and then uses those to rearrange and make any new protein that we need in our body. We can make about half of the amino acids our body needs to live, but we have to get the other half from the food we eat. Those are the essential amino acids. Protein is essential to life. Our bodies could not function without it. When you think of protein fanatic people, who comes to mind? I'll venture to guess that your answer is the same as mine. I'm Hans and I'm Franz and we are here to pump you up. Hear me now and believe me later, or listen to me yesterday or some other time. Right? Why are these meatheads so obsessed with protein? These people who want to get pumped or ripped or swole or whatever the kids are calling it these days. It's because it works. You need a lot of amino acid building blocks from protein to create muscle. Whether we want to crush girly men like grapes or not, we do want more muscle, especially as we age. So we should all eat more protein, right? Probably not. It's different for everybody, of course, but here's the problem. Protein is good for building muscle because it signals your body to enter a growth phase. These growth signals come through a really cool pathway that I want you to know about called the mammalian target of rapamycin, or mTOR is its abbreviation. Some people call mTOR the mechanistic target of rapamycin. It's the same thing. Rapamycin is a drug, and as a pharmacist, it's really hard for me to resist the urge to tell you more about the chemistry and mechanism of action of rapamycin, or that it was discovered on Easter Island. What? But I'm controlling myself. You're welcome. I really do respect and appreciate your time, and I don't want to waste it on tangents. This mTOR complex is a pathway that's stimulated by nutrients and growth factors and inhibited by stress to make sure that cells only grow during favorable conditions. If mTOR senses that there is plentiful energy and amino acid consumption, it assumes you're in a growth cycle and activates the production of a growth hormone called insulin-like growth factor 1, abbreviated IGF-1. This is another important thing to know about. These are the only two weird acronyms to learn in this episode, I promise. mTOR and IGF-1. IGF-1 sends signals to your cells to grow. Sounds great, right? Let's turn up the juice on our mTOR and IGF-1 by eating protein and put our bodies in a growth cycle. Wait a minute. What are those cells that grow too much called? Oh yeah. In addition to increasing your risk for cancer, having mTOR and IGF-1 turned on all the time speeds up your aging process, increasing your risk for all of the other common diseases of aging like high blood sugar, obesity, Alzheimer's, and heart disease. Speeding up the aging process is not something I'm looking to do. So now what? Do you remember 2 weeks ago when we talked about the good kind of stress, hormetic stress? Do you remember what the one thing is that has proven to increase lifespan and health span in all species it has ever been tested in? Yes, our old friend, calorie restriction. The good stress from having an absence of nutrients, especially amino acids, turns off mTOR and IGF-1, taking us out of a growth cycle. When we're out of a growth cycle, our body uses the energy it would have used growing new cells to scan and prune out any dysfunctional cells through autophagy. Any misfolded proteins or underperforming cellular machinery is scrapped and recycled for parts. Remember, under periods of good stress, only the strong survive. We want this. When it comes to our subcellular functioning, we're ruthless taskmasters with high standards. You might not be like Steve Jobs or Elon Musk with other humans, but you can and should be with your biochemistry. If we're constantly in a growth cycle, things start to get out of control, misshapen and dysfunctional molecules stick around, and the garbage never gets taken out. Some people believe that the whole reason calorie restriction is so good for longevity is because it necessarily restricts protein consumption. While that isn't proven, it has been shown in many human and animal studies that the lower your IGF-1 level is, it can be measured in your blood, which is a good thing to do, the longer you live and the less chance you have of developing cancer. So there's the answer, right? Don't eat protein. Do like a keto diet, but for protein. Eat only fats and carbs. Can you imagine? It would be like all frosting all the time. Blech. We intuitively know that that's not the answer. While abundant amino acids are the main stimulus for mTOR, overabundant calories in general still stimulates growth, and of course, excessive carbohydrates stimulate insulin, which is the fat storage hormone. So the frosting diet isn't going to work. Darn. Plus, remember, our bodies are largely made of protein and they cannot function without it, especially the essential amino acids that we would eventually die without. Like a lot of things, the key is moderation, both in amount and in timing. Dr. Stephen Gundry, who I love and trust, says that most Americans consume far more protein, particularly animal protein, than they need. He says the amount of protein we need is far less than what we've been told. He recommends 0.37 grams of protein per kilo of body weight, so 25 grams of protein for a 150-pound person. He says the reasons we've been told to eat more protein than we need is because of the meat industry and the subsidized crops that are grown to feed those animals. Maybe. I know he's smarter than I am, and I believe a lot of what he says, but I don't know if I buy this one hook, line, and sinker. I'm sure there is a lot of truth to it, but cows were not made to eat the subsidized grains that we feed them either, so that's a whole nother can of worms that goes way beyond just meat sales. I think the kind of meat you choose to eat definitely matters here. I'm personally not opposed to humanely raised, grass-fed, or pasture-raised animal protein. I also think that there are benefits to eating more than 25 grams of protein, especially if you lift weights, which I hope you do, but I digress. Dr. Gundry's very pro-plant-rich diet, which is great. His argument for eating less protein, especially far less animal protein, is that as mTOR is scanning the body for energy availability, it watches for certain pro-growth amino acids more than others. These are methionine, cysteine, and isoleucine. They are more prevalent in animal protein than plant-based protein. So plant-based proteins don't stimulate IGF-1 as much as animal products do, which is a good point to know. James Clement is a lawyer who, funnily enough, wrote a great book about mTOR and autophagy, and what he says about mTOR is, quote, "If you're not working these mechanisms properly, then it doesn't matter what your good intentions are or the practices that you think you're following," end quote. This is important because you can be doing a million healthy things, but if you're eating too much protein and too often, you could still be inhibiting your body's ability to clean out junk, detox, gobble up cancer cells, burn fat, and live longer. The key point is that we evolved to sometimes have our mTOR switch turned on so we grow, and sometimes turned off so we have a chance to clean up and repair. The modern American lifestyle has us with mTOR turned on almost all the time. If we're in a 365-day growth cycle, there's no repair cycle, and that's a problem. A big problem that results in tons of modern diseases of aging that are overwhelming our healthcare system and robbing us of what could be vibrant years of our life. You know that intermittent fasting, otherwise known as time-restricted eating, is a hormetic stress that turns on autophagy. This is amazing and fabulous, and I would recommend that most people think about whether it would safely work for them or not. What a lot of people may not know is that you can turn off mTOR and by association IGF-1 by protein fasting, not with frosting. Or you could call it protein cycling. I kind of like that term better. You can get a lot of benefits while still eating and thus not feeling quite so restricted, but by cutting back on protein. In addition to turning on mTOR, protein also stimulates insulin release. So if you restrict your protein and your carbohydrates, you turn off both mTOR and insulin, which turns on autophagy. James Clement recommends that you have the switch on for 4 months of the year and off for 8 months of the year. He says this can be broken up however you choose. 2 months off, 1 month on, 1 month off, 2 weeks on, whatever. You don't want too much time in autophagy or you will start to weaken, starting with your immune system, so don't go overboard. If thinking of the 4 months on, 8 months off works for you, that's great. Another option is to do a 5-day protein fast per month. Dr. Walter Longo, who is very cool, has a fasting mimicking diet that he recommends you do every day for 5 days in a row, once a month, every month. The goal is the same, low protein for autophagy purposes. He even sells a kit of these products called Prolon that are carefully made without any protein sources that have those amino acids that are most likely to turn on mTOR. He has shown that the 5 days of this fasting mimicking diet produces the same benefits as a whole month of calorie restriction. I'm sure the Prolon kit is great, but I'd have a hard time spending $180 for 5 days of almost no eating. It seems like it should be cheaper to not eat, not more expensive, but that's just my opinion. I'm still curious about it, but I'm sure it could be figured out how to do it yourself without the kit. Of the various options, I really like Dave Asprey's approach. Part of his bulletproof diet is to protein fast or protein cycle 1 day per week, every week. This gives you a whole day a week of autophagy, and you can eat high-quality protein during the rest of the week. Dave says, quote, "When you occasionally limit protein consumption, you force your cells to find every possible way to recycle proteins. In their search, they find and excrete toxins that were lurking in your cell's cytoplasm. It's like taking your car to the car wash and having it deep cleaned," end quote. He suggests 0 to 15 grams of protein on your protein fasting day. He even says that some autophagy is required for maintaining muscle mass. So 1 day a week of very low protein won't hurt and might even help with your muscle building goals. mTOR turns on growth, which you want when you're working on building muscle. But actually, deliberately briefly lowering your mTOR lets it spring back up better for more muscle gain once you eat protein again, giving you a bigger bang for your protein buck. Maybe that will pump you up. It's better than just eating the same amount of protein every day, especially animal protein, which might age you faster. You do want to have your protein fasting day be on a day that you aren't lifting heavy weights. Do it on your rest and recovery day. Protein fasting isn't for everyone, certainly not for pregnant or breastfeeding moms, and maybe people with some more fragile medical conditions, but it's great for the vast majority of people. I would invite you to consider how much protein you eat. Do you even know? There's a chance that it's too much. I know a lot of fitness people recommend 1 gram per pound, which is a far cry from Dr. Gundry's 0.37 grams per kilo recommendation. For a 150-pound person, that's either 25 grams a day or 150 grams a day. Pretty huge difference. What works for someone else won't be what works for you. Do you know what works best for you? You can do some experimenting to find out. I'll bet it's somewhere in the middle of those two options. You don't have to go to either extreme. But if you're not currently oiling yourself up for a bodybuilding competition and going on a 50-state tour in an effort to build a flabless utopia, you probably don't need to be eating like a bodybuilder, even if you're into weightlifting and looking to gain some muscle. More than 100 grams of protein per day might be aging you quicker and increasing your chance of getting cancer, heart disease, arthritis, dementia, and diabetes. Consider whether you have a day that you don't work out hard that you could try protein cycling. Protein cycling is something I've been planning to do for a few years, but I'll admit that I'm not great at it yet. I see the reason for it, and I'm committing to be better. When optimizing your diet, I do think it's important to focus on cutting out simple carbs first before moving on to protein cycling. I'll have to do my low protein days on either Tuesdays or Sundays. Those are my rest days, so I think Tuesday will be the winner. I don't think my boys would be hugely thrilled to have a vegan-like proteinless Sunday dinner every week. I mean, I'm sure they'd live, but Tuesday's the path of least resistance here. All I really need to do is come up with some good low-protein meal prep ideas that I can get ready ahead of time. It won't actually be too hard. I just need to really commit to doing it no matter what. What about you? How do you feel about cutting back your protein 1 day a week or 5 days a month? What would you eat? How would you keep track of how much protein you're eating that day? 15 grams is pretty low, even for just vegetables. You'd have to carefully curate which vegetables you have that day. I hope you can see the benefits of autophagy and how some brief periods of low protein can boost your autophagy and therefore your health and longevity. mTOR really is an amazing pathway to know about and be able to influence. It's a major key to your health span. Whether you're ready to commit to starting with me right now, or it's just a seed planted in your mind for your future optimizing endeavors, there are lots of levers we can pull to keep our physiology naturally working well so we can avoid common diseases and the medications that often go along with them. We are made to thrive in cycles of both growth and repair. If we ate purely seasonally, this wouldn't be a problem. It's a problem caused by convenience. We're not made to eat the exact same things every day. Our culture has most of us stuck in a 365-day growth cycle that doesn't allow for the maintenance and repair time that we so desperately need. So we have to proactively architect it into our lives. Next week, we're going to meditate on our most valued virtues. Until then, remember your mTOR, don't OD on protein, and don't be normal. Thank you so much for tuning into the Health Courage Collective podcast. I am truly honored that you have paid me the enormous compliment of your time and attention. I would be so grateful if you would share this podcast with someone you know and subscribe so you never miss an episode. This podcast is for entertainment and information purposes only. Statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Christina Hackett and producers, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse events by use of information contained herein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.